News is breaking right now in the Tyre Nichols case. His family and their attorney file a landmark civil lawsuit against Memphis. Just to refresh you on this case, Tyre Nichols was stopped by the Memphis police on January 7th. The officers who stopped him were a part of a specialized group of officers called the Scorpion Unit. They alleged they stopped him for reckless driving, yanked him from his car, tased him, taunted him, and while he was handcuffed, beat him to within an inch of his life, took photos of him as he struggled to breathe, and while he was still able to breathe, Tyre screamed out for his mother into the neighborhood in hopes that she or someone nearby would come to his aid as he was being brutalized to death by those we expect to protect and serve. We're going to get into it, but first be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on updates to this story, trending topics, and so much more. Now let's get into it. The story of Tyre Nichols is a sad story. It is a story of betrayal, but I am here for this lawsuit. These 5 police officers, along with their accessory partners, ambushed Tyre Nichols on January 7th. And then when the first responders who were there to render aid arrived, they just stood there and watched Tyre suffer along with the police officers. And all of this was captured on a cop sky camera. Tyre was eventually transported to a hospital in critical condition and died on January 10th. Tyre was beaten so badly that he was left unrecognizable. And the lawsuit is comparing this case to that of Emmett Till. And it compares the Memphis police officers, Demetrius Haley, Tadarius Bean, Emmett Martin, Desmond Mills, and Justin Smith to a modern-day lynch mob. And that the difference between this case and Emmett Till is that the lynching was carried out by police officers adorned in department sweatshirts and vests, and their actions were sanctioned expressly and implicitly by the city of Memphis. The $550 million lawsuit refers to the police officers as unqualified, untrained, and unsupervised. Roe Von Wells, the family's lawyer, says that this is a direct reflection of the police department's unconstitutional customs and policies. Remember, when this case first came to light in January, more victims came out to share their stories about their experience with this very same group of officers, the Scorpion Unit. So there is a pattern of practices that's showing up here. Tyre's mother goes on to say that this has nothing to do with the monetary value of this lawsuit, but rather it is to hold everyone who has something to do with the murder of her son accountable. The reasons Tyre was stopped in his car were never substantiated, and the 5 police officers, who are also Black, were fired following an internal investigation and were indicted on criminal charges on January 26th. The spokesperson for the Memphis Police declined to comment on the ongoing litigation. Attorney Ben Crump says this landmark lawsuit is not only to get the justice for Tyre Nichols in the civil courts, but it is also a message that is being sent to cities all across America who have these police oppression units that have been given the license by city leaders to go in and terrorize Black and brown communities. The lawsuit also alleges that Tyre Nichols was targeted by a Memphis police crime suppression unit called the Scorpion Unit, which officials said would target repeat violent offenders in high crime areas only because he was a young Black man. Now, I was wondering where CJ Davis fits into this because there is no way with a lawsuit this monumental that she would get by unscathed. And so I found that the lawsuit accuses Memphis Police Director Cerelyn CJ Davis of starting a crime suppression unit to target repeat violent offenders in high crime areas. The lawsuit claims the Scorpion Unit used extreme intimidation, humiliation, and violence, and disproportionately focused on targeting young Black men. The attorneys are seeking a jury trial in this case and financial damages. Contrary to popular belief, it doesn't matter the skin color of the oppressor. It matters that oppression is wrong and it should be stopped. The lawsuit names the following as defendants in the case: the city of Memphis, Police Director Davis, the 5 officers who have been fired and charged, and 1 officer who has been fired but not charged. I'm thinking that this is Preston Hemphill, and an additional officer who retired before he could be fired. He thought he was slick. It also names 3 Memphis Fire Department employees who were fired after they failed to render aid to Nichols as he was on the ground, struggling with his injuries. Bankrupt them all for the rest of their lives. Can you imagine how excruciating this is for his mother? To know that he was just feet from his home and he was calling out for her in his last moments? That's the kind of pain that no amount of money can ever fix. And you know what else that screams that what these police officers did to Tyre is customary and common practice is so easily how they turned off and on their body cameras and started to concoct a story saying that he was fighting back and that he was reaching for their weapons. They were doing this in the process of beating him. They were creating their alibi on cue, all while this ordeal was going down. They didn't have to think about it. One would lead off with the narrative and then they all fell in line, adding their own comments to the mix. They didn't take the time to go off camera and practice what they were saying. They were creating it in the process of beating Tyre. They were documenting the storyline on their body cameras, taking them on and off right there, should this come back on them in the future. Now, if that doesn't scream culture, I don't know what does. And then after they performed for the camera, they all smiled and laughed and talked with each other as if a man wasn't dying right in front of them. It is reported that members of this unit, the Scorpion unit, regularly engaged in a practice of jumping out to ambush Memphis citizens and aggressively harass them and search them in public. This lawsuit also alleges that the Memphis Police Department lowered their standards for who can become an officer, making it easier to graduate from the police academy by allowing recruits to retake exams several times. Wow. The lawsuit alleges that they were doing this at the time the Scorpion unit members were brought on. So essentially, they allowed anyone in and then, by all intents and purposes, created a gang. It also says, in addition to them being less qualified, the new recruits were not properly trained in a number of areas, including probable cause, traffic stops, the Fourth Amendment, and use of force. Wow, these are people that they are legally issuing guns and then turning them loose on our streets for the purposes of ambushing Black and brown people. It is being reported that the Justice Department is reviewing the Memphis Police Department's policies on the use of force, de-escalation strategies, and specialized units in response to Tyre Nichols' death. The U.S. is in desperate need of police reform. The next video I'm working on for you is another example of this. Shout out to all my sources: CNN.com, Fox News, NBC News. Justice for Tyre.